Fairy Tales 3. Sleeping Beauty. Once upon a time, there was a king and queen who had been married for a long time but had never given birth to a child, which bothered them for a long time. One day, while the queen was walking by the river near the palace, a golden fish suddenly surfaced and said to the queen, "Beautiful queen, you are about to give birth to a daughter." A few days later, the fish's prophecy came true and the queen was really pregnant and gave birth to a very beautiful little princess a few months later, which made the king so happy that he decided to hold a big banquet to share his joy with the whole country. This grand banquet not only invited the king's relatives, friends, and foreign guests, but also invited the country's unique witches, who have high magic power and can definitely make their wishes come true with their magic, so the king especially wanted them to come to the banquet and give his daughter good magic wishes. But although there were 13 witches in the kingdom, the king only had 12 golden plates to serve them, so he invited only the 12 witches he was familiar with, and did not invite the other one who was a bit more withdrawn. At the end of the grand banquet, all the guests gave the young princess the best gifts. The witches also cast their spells and blessed the princess with kindness, beauty, and gentleness, giving her all the advantages that everyone would like to have. However, just as the 11th witch had finished her blessing, the 13th witch, the lonely witch who had not been invited, entered the banquet hall, furious at not being invited and determined to exact revenge. She shouted, "The king's daughter will die at the age of 15 from a spindle." At this point, all those present were terrified, but the 12th witch, who had not yet presented the gift, stepped forward and, while casting her spell, said, "Even if the curse is fulfilled, the princess will not die immediately, she will only be temporarily asleep, but perhaps for more than 100 years. The king and queen were so worried and upset after that they decided to destroy all the spindles in the country in order to protect their daughter. After more than a decade, the little princess grew up and everything the witches had predicted was fulfilled in her. She was kind, beautiful, gentle and elegant, the idol of the whole country, and the attraction of everyone. On her 15th birthday, the king and queen celebrated her birthday with great fear and trepidation, but nothing happened on that day. However, as the princess was returning to her palace, she suddenly felt the urge to go for a walk in the palace alone and explore. So she began to wander around the vast palace. In this palace, where she had lived since she was a child, there seemed to be no place that the princess had not been before. But just as she had wandered through all the rooms and was about to return to her room to rest, she saw a staircase appear at the end of the corridor. The princess approached the staircase and found that she could climb up a tall tower. She couldn't resist her curiosity and climbed up slowly. Just when she felt tired, she saw an old wooden door with a golden key on the lock. The princess looked at the key, feeling a little dizzy. She could not help but reach out her hand and gently turn the key. The princess was surprised to see a strange old grandmother sitting in the room. Although the princess was a little surprised, she saw the grandmother sitting in front of a tool she had never seen before. "Hello, Granny, what is this tool in front of you? What are you doing?" The grandmother looked at the princess and replied to her in a somewhat hoarse voice, "I am spinning a yarn." The princess looked at the spinning hammer with great interest and said with fascination, "What an interesting little part that keeps spinning." The princess tried to pick up the spindle, but as soon as she touched it, the sharp needle of the spindle pierced her finger, but to her surprise, the princess suddenly lost consciousness at the moment of injury, and slowly fell to the ground, unconscious. The fog spread to the palace, and the servants in the palace fell asleep in the fog, and the fog spread to the palace, and the king and queen fell asleep together, and the fog spread to the whole city. Everything was suspended in this instant. As time went on, the hedge grew taller and denser, especially the princess's dormitory, which was so tightly covered that even the roof and the towering chimney were hidden from view. As time passed, gossips and stories formed a legend, with bards telling the story of a beautiful princess who fell into an endless sleep in the palace. This beautiful legend has attracted countless people, and even young princes from many countries have come to explore, hoping to enter the palace through the dense bush to learn the truth and try to solve the mystery and the curse. However, they were unsuccessful. Some of them kept circling in the fog, while others kept getting entangled and tripped by the bushes and vines, as if there were countless hands around the palace interfering with them and even trying to leave them behind, so that they could not escape and eventually fell asleep together in pain. One day, a brave young prince came to this land without knowing it, but this misty jungle attracted his attention. He asked an old grandfather who lived nearby about what had happened here, and the grandfather explained to him in full the origin of the whole legend, and told him that many princes had come here and tried to cross the hedge, but never came back, and advised him to leave and not to step into this dangerous place. However, the prince thought for a moment. He felt sympathy for the princess and thought that there was no reason for her to bear this evil curse, so the prince thanked his grandfather politely and stood up to see if he could go in and save the princess. So the prince drew his sword and without hesitation set out on the road to the palace, full of determination and courage. He also had a very high level of martial arts. He quickly cleared the bushes, through the vines, around the thistles, determined will to guide him through the fog, alone, step by step towards the palace. When he entered the palace, he saw that everything was asleep. The surrounding area was surprisingly quiet, and unlike the surrounding bushes, there was no dust on the floor. The building was unbelievably clean, as if time had stopped flowing. He looked around curiously and slowly explored in all directions, and as if guided by magic, he also came to the old palace building and pushed open the door of the room where the princess was. But all he saw was a beautiful princess sleeping soundly on a fluffy carpet. Although it was the first time the prince saw the princess, he felt that he had known her for a long time, and he gently picked her up from the carpet and moved slowly to the bedroom, standing by the bed, and carefully laid her gently on the bed. He looked at the lovely face of the princess and couldn't help but lean down and kiss her cheek. It was in this moment the prince's courage, his will and his love for the princess broke the curse. The princess slowly opened her eyes, as if she had had a long dream, and seemed to understand everything that had happened over the years. She smiled and looked at the prince, and the two of them talked for a long time with joy, until their hearts connected and they left the palace building together. The prince and the princess together explained everything to the awakened king and queen, and agreed to get married with the king's consent, and they lived happily ever after.